right, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I guess I'm ready.
Okay, so my name is Erin. I have been a part of this business my entire life. It's my family business. We have been here since 1968, so this is our 55th year. We're going to show you how to find opal.
All right.
What you are looking for when you go out there is something that is very white, very shiny, very almost like glass-like in appearance. So this kind of almost milky colored glass that you see here in the rock, that's your opal. What happened with the opal is it's a secondary fill-in. So there was some obsidian and rhyolite flows that had these holes and gas pockets in them. And when the opal came through as a geothermal hot water deposit, it filled in wherever there was space. So in this one, you can see like kind of the little holes and stuff it has in it. That's where the opal fills into. So wherever there's a hole or a gas pocket or a geode or something like that for it to fill into, that's where it does. So that's why there's no specific size or shape of opal. It is limited only to the size of the space that it fills into. So they can be smaller, like this guy here, where you can see it's kind of a part of a little, almost like a geode-like type formation. They can be larger, like this guy here, because all of this around here is your opal. So like I said, just limited only to the size of what it had to fill into. So what you want to do is pick a spot, sit down, and kind of look through the rocks that are around you, because you need to make sure you kind of turn them around and look, because you might be looking at the backside of something like this. That's not that great. But you do turn it over and you have your opal here. So what you want to do is just kind of, I'm not saying you have to physically inspect each one for 10 minutes, but just give them a cursory once around and look and see if you do see that really brilliant white shiny that is the opal itself. Then in turn, you're going to get that wet and check for color. So when you get it wet,
which Mother Nature might do for us already today.
Oh yes, I think everything out there has been freshly washed off. How's that? But when you do see the kind of like little green flakes that you get down in here with this one, that's the portion of the opal that you want that is desirable for making jewelry. So in this one right here, you can see the green line that comes across that way. This little spot down in here has opal as well. And that's what you want. You want that kind of rainbow opalescence in that white rock. Now they can be big, they can be small, they can be really any size, like this little guy right here is just a tiny one, but it does have great color. Because like I said, it is just solely limited to that space that it had to fill. So just keep in mind you want that shiny, brilliant, glassy white. Now, where there's not a lot of sun out there today, you're probably going to have a harder time seeing color. But what I recommend is that you pick up everything that's opal and put it in your bucket. Because you could always sort it out later at home. You can always sort it out when the sun comes out or something like that. But definitely go for that brilliant, shiny white. All of that goes in the bucket.
Okay, and so if I see pockets, should I focus kind of on that rock in that area?
Definitely
break it open?
Yes, anything that has those kind of pockets or holes like that in it, definitely give that a once over. I always tell people it's all in how hard you want to work. If you don't see opal on the outside, 90% of the time you're not going to see opal on the inside. But if it does have those holes and stuff like that, that is a good indicator that there could be something else within. Now, if you want to bust that apart, you go right ahead. But if you don't feel like working that hard, you can go on to something else. It is totally up to you on that.
Is it pretty hard digging? Are they pretty solid rocks? Or are
the obsidian and the rhyolite are probably about a 6.5 on the Mohs scale. They're pretty sturdy, because rhyolite is basically kind of like a variant of a jasper. Not as hard as a jasper though. But the other way to look at it when you break stuff, if you look at this guy right here, it's really easy to see there's kind of like a grain to the obsidian, almost like there's a grain to wood. If you hit it with that, most oftentimes it will break with that grain too. So if you wanted to take part of this off right here, you would start back here and hit your way towards the opal, because the closer you get to it, the more likely you are to break it. So you want to stay as far away from it as you can and just kind of tip your way towards it.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask too, is this is obsidian mixed in with opal, kind of interlayered?
So the obsidian flow, this one right here is a pretty easy one to see, because you can see kind of the obsidian flow going around there with the holes and the kind of gas pockets it had. That was there, they figure, long before the opal, like probably several 100,000 years before the opal. So it's actually older and harder than the opal itself. And they figure at one time we were probably part of the Yellowstone caldera. Because if you go...
Right, as it comes through, yeah.
Yeah, because if you go straight across from us to Yellowstone, it's only about 70 miles. And from the way it was described to me, the hot spot doesn't move, but the Earth's crust moves across the top. And, you know, we're right in that direct path there then. And there's a lot of geothermal activity here in southern Idaho. So it is entirely possible that that could have once been.
All right, very cool. Thank you for the
No
tips.
problem. What other questions do you have?
About digging?
Yeah.
So I have a bucket of stuff that but you have a bucket for
Yes,
that
so
you
we
provide.
give everybody a bucket because then everybody's bucket to put rocks in is the same. That way nobody's is bigger or smaller or shorter or taller than others. That way it makes it fair. But if you have a bucket that you have your tools and stuff in, go ahead and use those, no problem.
Okay. And for filling the bucket, it can be mounted and like whatever fits in
As
the bucket,
long
or
as
as long
you
as it's
can pick it up by the
All right.
handle, even if they're squeaked up to the top of the handle, I do not care.
All right.
As long as it's not clear down here and then stacked up under your chin.
all right. Sounds good.
All right. Well,
so I
then,
guess-
let me show you where
yeah,
the
where do
water
I go?
faucet is, and we'll get you out there digging before it rains on you.
All right.
Right on the outside of the gate where there's that little red and white sign, there's a little wooden post that has a water faucet on it. You can fill up your spray bottles or
Okay.
buckets or anything
Yep.
out of there.
I brought one of those.
Anywhere out there you want to go, it's like I said, it should be all nicely washed for you.
All right. Perfect.
Have fun.
Good time. And you just opened up like last week or the week
Yeah,
before,
because
so
we've had so much snow here. If you look on the hills, you can still see.
Yeah, I
we've
saw
got
it on
big old
the-
snow
on the way
drifts
down
and stuff
here.
like that. So yeah, we had probably 3 or 4 foot snow drifts in the parking lot clear up until the 12th of May.
Ooh.
So it's been a long winter here, and we're real thankful it's over.
yeah, I'm glad it worked out that you're open right when I'm in the neighborhood.
Exactly. So like I said, anywhere out there you want to go, if you get up on top there, it's where we just put out all the new stuff last fall
All right.
before we got nasty weather, and we haven't had but like 3 or 4 diggers since we opened, so you should be in good
All
shape.
right, great. Thank you
Have
very
fun.
much. All right, I'm at the Spencer Opal Mine here in Spencer, Idaho, and I've got my bucket and some tools, hammer, spray bottle, and apparently I'm one of the first ones out on the dig pile this year. They just opened last week or the week before, and so we're going to look around and find some opal. Picked up a couple pieces of small opal on the way up, just because figured if you see something, you don't want to leave it behind, according to Erin. So I'll check in a little bit when the sun's threatening to come out. But I think what I'll do is kind of hunker down and poke around a bit. Get my water bottle going here, and I'll come back if I see anything kind of interesting. But you can see there's quite a lot to go through. It's right off the highway, Highway 15, just over the Montana-Idaho border in Idaho. Real easy to get to. We're just a couple minutes in, and I've already found a little bit of color in a edge of a vesicle, which that was what Erin said to look for. So right up where the white meets the dark, there's a little bit of green and red. So there could be a little bit more hiding in there. We'll see. I think I'm gonna have to focus mostly on surface picking here because this is about, an inch below the surface. This just turns to mud. And I've gotten a couple sprinkles since starting, but the sun has fortunately come out, so I think now might be a good time to do a little surface wander and look for signs of opal. That's some pink opal and white opal there. And one of the gentlemen of the mine came over and helped me pick out a couple of things, and let's see. Well, basically he found this one, which has a bit of blue and green flash in the sun there, and gave that to me along with a couple other pieces, and said a lot of the areas that I was looking at, like the cleaned off areas over there, are more likely to be picked over already because they've been kind of sorted, whereas you want to focus a little more on the dirt patch areas, or where there's not just like lots of rocks, it's more dirt and mixed stuff and check those areas out first because those are less likely to be looked over as closely. So I'll do that and see if anything pops out in the sun now. I found a couple of decent pieces in this area, at least with a bit of color. And even if somebody dug out a little bit here and this is kind of their discard pile, it's still the best color I'm finding. So I think we'll take a closer look at some of these. This is almost like jelly opal. It's very crystalline and clear, but no color. But yeah, the sun definitely helps in finding the flash. This was glinting in the sun, but there's no color in it. This is the first and nicest piece that I've found in quite a while. I saw a little bit on this side and then turned it. You can see a lot more color coming through that one. And etc., etc. Now, this is what I wound up with after hunting at Spencer Opal Mine for a little over 3.5 hours, something like 4 hours, give or take. And out of all of this, this material over here has play of color. And this all fit in this red bucket here. I was kind of surprised that I wound up with this much material with some play of color in it. I'll put some photos and videos of the better lighting and showing off the colors and things while I'm talking here, just so we get a little more interesting visual of things going on, because it's really hard to see in some lights. But I would say I definitely had fun at the Spencer Opal Mine. I could have spent a lot longer out there hunting for interesting material, but I had to do an interview that I arranged with Leo at the mine there.
I'm Leo Mortensen. I'm the professional cutter here at Spencer Opal Mines. I do gem cutting, cabochons, things like that nature. I specialize in opal, but I also cut other stones. Opal is a geothermal secondary deposit stone. It forms when a geyser is alive. It carries a lot of silica molecules in the water. When that geyser dies and the heat dissipates, that water starts to evaporate and recede into the rock. It leaves those silica molecules behind and they form net patterns that refracts light. If your silica molecules are perfectly spherical, it'll turn it into precious opals. If they're oblong or misshapen, it's common opal. So opal's just a gem silica. 1% of all opal in the entire world forms color. To have opal with color, you have to have very, very specific circumstances. Our opal is found in volcanic glass that had existed before it. The other one is found in basalt, similar to ours. Australian opal is found in sandstone. Mostly it's just wherever that the silica molecules can be deposited is where it will form. That's why you can even get them in dirt, in clay that turns into just different types of sandstone over time. And those are more like amorphous opals that flow through your rock, whereas ours is very fixed in position due to the rock having existed before the opal was formed. Black opal from like Australia, it goes for around $6,750 a carat to between $20,000 a carat. Our mine does produce black opal. It happens when our pink opal has so much iron in it that it produces a blackish purple hue. You can actually find them on our mini-mine, although be aware that there's like only 10 of them in existence, so rare. Compared to the value of other black opals, traditionally black opal is all mined out, so we don't really know a value on that yet. Maybe one day I'll hit the vein and I'll be able to sell them for like $200 a carat, but we'll wait until then. You have like your main color bands, which are like your two most common types, which are broad flashes, which is just when it's one color all the way across. Then you have what's called a pinfire, where it looks like somebody just dotted a bunch of colors on it, and it looks like the sky. Then you have rarer color bands, like for example, this one is called a harlequin. That is a rare color band, typically not found very often. This is considered more of a broad flash. And then for us, the rarest color band you can form is something similar to this. This doublet right here is a star. Now it's gonna be hard to see on camera, but it will actually form a star like a star garnet or a star sapphire. And that is the rarest color band that you can get in opal. Because you have to have a very, very, very specific hexagonal silica net for it to form. You can kind of see it better in this photograph. It's hard to see with the naked eye. And you can also get mixes of color bands as well. You can get harlequins mixed with broad flashes. You can get overlapping color bands. The best thing about our opal is because of its horizontal layering structure, you can get micro layers of color stacked on top of each other, and they'll form new, unique, one-of-a-kind bands that you'll never see ever. So, just a very unique formation in there, that layering of those just super flat layers, whereas like, and the special thing is in a piece this big, this is the only color band. So you can get like I was telling you on the Mini-Mine, you can get small pieces with bands all the way through and you can't cut it because you're gonna lose something. But then you get bands like these where you have this giant piece of opal and you only get one color band all the way through. So it's kind of unique.
I'd say I'm kind of surprised that I wound up with this much, because you can go a long time without finding anything that might be decent. And so there were kind of stretches where I wasn't finding much. You know, you get kind of down on yourself, but you really shouldn't. And there are a couple of things I wanted to talk about I'll show some better videos as I'm talking here of what this material looks like. Definitely, if you see something that has the, glassy, precious opal-ish looking things, look to it, take it. After 3.5 hours out there, I had maybe 2/3 of my bucket full with material that I wanted to bring home. And at that point, I had to kind of rush to, there were a couple of things that I left behind that maybe had some of the precious opal looking sheen, but I didn't see any play of color in it. But I didn't keep it because I was like, it's nothing, I'll just toss it. I probably should have kept it in the bucket because I had the room at the end of the day, even after, 3.5 hours. It's a deceptively large bucket, It's 2.5 gallons, but it did fit quite a lot of material. And that's even with collecting some materials like this big chunk that I got towards the end of the day because I wanted a little bit of context, which, as we saw in the intro, there's the layering with the obsidian bands, and then there's the rhyolite, and then there's, opal filling in the vesicles here, which shows on this side as well, filling in the rhyolite and the vesicles. And there's a little pocket of opal maybe there, and some bigger pieces. Now this doesn't have any play of color, but I wanted the context there. But that, took up a big chunk of room. Also, with, the amount of time that I spent out there, having the material that I collected, if you're only out there for like an hour, if that's all you can spare, take the time, make the time to take more time. Because after an hour, I had, a couple of pieces, and they kind of come in fits and spurts, and you never know when you're going to find a couple pieces together. Like some of these were little fragments that I collected more or less at the same time in the same area, so they probably came from the same material or the same, geode pocket or whatever. If you go out there for an hour and fill up your bucket really quickly, you're going to come away with a lot more common opal duds and, things that you may not really want to be taking home for the $75 that the bucket costs to take home. But at the end of the day, I am happy with what I collected here. I would definitely go back and collect again when I'm, next in that area. Unfortunately, there's not a lot in the Spencer, Idaho area. So it's more of a, if you're going to, Yellowstone is in that area. If you're for some reason in southern Idaho, then it's definitely worth the stop, I think. Not only for the opal collecting, but they have a really nice gift shop. Leo and Erin, and I met AJ briefly, who's the Papa AJ. They're the owners of the mine. They do a really good job of making you feel welcome and knowledgeable in hunting and looking for opal, what to look for, what not to look for. And Leo came out a couple of times to help me and a couple other, another couple that was out there find material. And so this piece actually that I've shown a couple times, Leo found this when I was the only one out there, and he gave it to me to take home and show, like, this is kind of what you want to look for when you're looking for the precious opal, potentially precious opal. Now, in addition to the play of color, I knew going in that I wasn't going to find a bucket worth of material with color in it, so I decided to collect some things that I thought were interesting that weren't precious opal, including, let's see, some of my favorites. I'll just show a couple here. We have a piece of big jelly opal. Now, this is jelly opal because it's semi-transparent, or translucent, I should say. And my thought is, if I can clean up some of this potch, or not potch, but some of the rhyolite from there, I think it would look pretty cool, and maybe you could even carve something out of that if it stays whole. There are definitely some fractures where pieces might fall out as I work it, but I thought that was pretty neat. I have a couple of those little jelly opal-esque things to play with. So I also got a few different kind of geodes and pockets of botryoidal opal, or zeolites in some cases these might be. Like some of this more iron-rich material is a clear coating of opal, very clear opal over some potential zeolites. Haven't taken a closer look at them yet to figure out what they might be. But I also got a couple of obsidian pieces with, bubbles of opal filling them. I thought that was pretty neat. And then there's also a lot of material that I have that I collected that has a little bit of that sheen of potential precious opal, but didn't show any play of color. And so my plan now is, obviously I'm going to work some of this material that has a play of color that I can definitely see. There are some samples that have indicators of precious opal but didn't have any play of color. And I think what I'll do is try to cut them a little bit and see if there's anything that pops out as I work them. Because you never know if, this didn't have precious opal, but if there's a geode here, maybe there's a geode on the inside, or a vesicle that was filled on the inside, and that material on the inside will have precious opal. So I'll take it over to my 6-inch trim saw and chop up some of these and see if there's anything worth keeping or working with in the future. I'll just show one last piece. This was a pretty cool looking kind of vesicle, big space filling opal, I think. And on the underside, there's this rhyolite that almost looks like, picture jasper in terms of some of the swirls and patterns in there. But there's some pretty gemmy opal in there as well. And there's one piece right here that is like a hair's breadth away from being precious opal, I'm pretty sure. There's like a slight iridescence, but there's no color. So I definitely want to chop this one up, even though it looks pretty cool, and see if there's anything on the inside of this one. It kind of reminds me of a turtle shell for some reason. Now, I was in Missoula for a family vacation, and that was 3.5 hours away from the Spencer Opal Mine. I would definitely do that trip again, just to go back and see everything, get a few more opals, and have some stuff to play around with. If you're in the area, I highly recommend it, or definitely, make it a part of your trip when you are heading out to Idaho or Montana or Yellowstone, wherever you're going out there. In part because, where else are you going to collect precious opal? Well, there may be a spot closer to home, for me anyway, that has precious opal, but that's the topic of a future video, and part of the reason I went out to talk to Leo. So stay tuned for that video, and until then, I'll see you around.